Breaking news, guys. We just witnessed one of the most explosive moments in congressional history. And it wasn't from a senator, it wasn't from a president or even a prosecutor. In fact, it actually came from RFK Jr., who just stunned the entire House Appropriations Committee by doing what nobody else in Washington had the balls to say out loud, guys. Welcome back to the channel. This is Ron Yates. If you haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button and subscribe. Jerome Powell is finished. His time is up. That actually came out of the lips from the words of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, that's right, guys. While inflation is collapsing, groceries are dropping, and Trump's tariffs are raking in roughly $600 million a day, Jerome Powell is refusing to cut interest rates. And RFK Jr., he came out, he basically called him out on the national stage for playing politics with your paycheck. But that's only half the story. Now, because while the spotlight was on DC, you got Gavin Newsom out here quietly trying to bury the devastating news, a multi-billion-dollar budget failure. That's all we hear from these Democrats here. A multi-billion-dollar failure that could collapse California's economy again. Let that sink in. Anybody here from California? Do you know anyone who lives in California? Let me know, guys. This is why Gavin Newsom is begging for more federal money. Okay. Well, it's actually one of the reasons why. So what is the Fed really hiding behind their refusal to support President Trump's America First economy? And how did RFK Jr. humiliate Congress on national TV while exposing the truth about Medicaid fraud and political sabotage? We need to talk about this, guys, because this is not just some basic policy debate. This is a political earthquake, guys. So stay tuned, because what you're about to hear could literally change how you see the Fed, California's future, and RFK Jr.'s role in Trump's economic war. So let's go ahead and get down to it. Drop me a quick comment down below. Are you watching this show from your phone, from your computer, or from your TV? Just let me know. I appreciate it, guys. So let's go ahead and start with the moment that broke the internet, okay? RFK Jr. He didn't just show up to Capitol Hill. He owned the freaking room, guys. Now, this wasn't your average political theater. There was no cue cards. There was no stammering. Just cold, hard facts delivered with precision. The House Appropriations Committee, though, they thought they were going to trap RFK with a list of talking points about Trump's supposed Medicare cuts and heartless policy changes, right? But what they got instead was a full-on masterclass in policy, law, and science. So RFK Jr. dismantled Bernie Sanders' attempt to connect tax cuts to Medicare cuts. It's not just a rebuttal. It was a career-ending move. It was a career-ending moment for anybody who thought that they could spend numbers without receipts. And then came the fluoride debate with Democrat Mike Simpson. Now, this wasn't just awkward. It was devastating. So Mike Simpson, he came in with a little snarkle attitude. You know Mike Simpson, right? Thinking that he was just going to go ahead and score some cheap points on fluoride policy. Yeah, about that. Well, about 90 seconds in, he was retreating. RFK Jr., he cited peer-reviewed studies, national toxicology programs, and emerging links between fluoride and lower IQs in children. The room went dead silent. That's why this moment matters, guys, because whether you love him or not, RFK Jr. stunned Congress by doing something that almost nobody in D.C. ever really does anymore. He told the truth, he backed it up, and then he left them speechless. Now, drop a quick comment down below. Do you believe that RFK Jr. has a point, that fluoride, especially in drinking water, lowers the IQs of children? Let me know, guys. But this wasn't even the most dangerous moment. That actually came when he came out and he called out the one man almost nobody dares to criticize, Jerome Powell. You see, guys, Medicare is kind of like a government-sponsored escape room, okay? Except nobody gives you a roadmap. There's no map there, but the clock is ticking. And that's why I send people over to Chapter. They've helped thousands of folks get out of this Medicare maze without getting upsold or misled. Ladies and gentlemen, Chapter's team actually compares every single plan. They're checking to see if your doctor's included, and they will help you access any benefits that you may not have even known that you qualified for. So I want you to know that the average senior is saving around $1,100 a year with Chapter. That's pretty freaking awesome. $1,100 a year? That's no chump change. Well, they actually started Chapter after their own parents got ripped off. So I can see the passion behind Chapter, and it makes sense. The folks over there, they're so nice, they're so courteous, and they're just so helpful. So make sure you don't get left behind, and make sure you're not overpaying. Give our friends over at Chapter a call. You can reach them at 909-563-8279, or you can hit them up on the web at askchapter.org/Ron. And, if there's any money on the table, make sure you get yours, okay? And tell them Ron sent you. Anyway, so now let's listen closely to this, right? So, because RFK Jr., he didn't name drop Jerome Powell just to make headlines. RFK Jr. did it to hold power accountable, okay? So while President Trump's economic plans delivering results, lowered inflation, record-shattering job growth, grocery price relief, and billions in tax relief, billions in tariff revenue, I mean, the federal government, or I should say more specifically, the Federal Reserve is still standing in the way in spite of all that. And Jerome Powell, he's the roadblock. You see, guys, RFK Jr., he called it out plainly. The Fed is ignoring the reality on the ground. They're refusing to cut interest rates, refusing to reward American families for the progress that's already been made. But the big question is why? Well, it's because Jerome Powell's sitting on top of a Fed where 90% of the economists are registered Democrats. You let that sink in there. Now, once you hear that, it starts to make sense, right? And instead of following the data, they're following the politics, guys. So Jerome Powell isn't just failing to act, he's actively sabotaging America's comeback. That's the charge. And RFK Jr., he didn't flinch when he said it. Jerome Powell is finished. Not in a few years, now, he said. So let's be clear. The Fed's refusal to act is costing Americans billions of dollars in interest every single day. You got families who could be buying homes. You got small businesses who could be growing. You have workers that could be thriving, all of them held back because one guy refuses to admit Trump's economy is working. And in just a few minutes, guys, I'm going to share with you guys the receipts, the numbers that actually prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Jerome Powell has no excuse. Trump's economy is booming, and every expert who said otherwise is now backpedaling hard. So stick around, guys, because we just getting warmed up here. Now, if you haven't already, please take a second, hit the like button for the video, and definitely subscribe to the channel if you're just now joining the live here. And let me know where you're watching this live from. I really, really would like to know that. Now, let's talk about the real numbers because they are undeniable. In the past few months alone, President Trump's economic policies have done what the so-called experts were saying was impossible, right? Inflation crushed it. It's now at the lowest level since February 2021. Now, this is clearly a direct result of slashing unnecessary spending and bringing energy costs down, and yes, putting America first. But of course, that's only the beginning. Now, for 3 straight months, February, March, and April, Trump's job creation has shattered expectations by over 50%. This isn't vague. This isn't theory. This is hard data. Real people getting real work. Now, here's the kicker. Grocery prices, guys. They just saw their biggest drop in over 5 years. For American families living paycheck to paycheck, that's not a statistic. It's a lifeline. Are you guys seeing gas prices dropping in your area? If you are, let me know how much gas prices are in your area. Meanwhile, President Trump's strategic tariffs, called reckless by critics, they're now pulling in over $600 million every single day. That's more than $4 billion a week in real revenue that's not coming from taxing American workers, but from foreign competitors who've been undercutting our economy for decades. So let's not forget, guys, in only 4 months, Trump has drawn $5 trillion in domestic manufacturing investments. $5 trillion. That's expected to create what? Like maybe 500,000 paying jobs right here in the United States? That's a good deal of money. Wouldn't you agree? So how do you sleep on that, right? Like even mainstream media could not ignore this. CNN, they acknowledged the numbers. Bloomberg News retracted their recession forecast, admitting that Trump's plan is unstoppable. So here's the question. If all of that is true, if inflation is falling, jobs are booming, prices are dropping, and investment is surging, why is Jerome Powell still keeping interest rates sky high? The answer is it's not economics, it's politics. So buckle up, guys, because I'm about to unpack something that's probably going to make your blood boil. Now, we've uncovered that, over 90% of economists at the Federal Reserve are registered Democrats. The very institution tasked with steering America's economy objectively is overwhelmingly staffed by people who politically oppose the current president and his economic doctrine. So while Trump delivers results and RFK Jr. lays out the receipts, Jerome Powell's still over here dragging his feet. Why? It's because admitting Trump's success means admitting their own failure. You see, Powell has become the last line of defense for the DC establishment, the globalists, the elitists, the people who've profited off of open borders, offshore jobs, and rigged trade deals. They don't want to see America win without him at the wheel. Of course not. And instead of putting America first, Jerome Powell is playing politics with your mortgage, with your credit card interest, and with your retirement. Meanwhile, American taxpayers are bleeding billions of dollars every single day because the Fed won't lower interest rates. RFK Jr. is right. If Powell won't step aside, he needs to be replaced with somebody who actually supports the economic revival Americans voted for. And as Powell clings to power over in California, you got Gavin Newsom, who's secretly scrambling to cover up this budget disaster that's absolutely so massive it could entirely bankrupt the state again. Can you imagine California being bankrupt again? The entire state? Well, guys, we're about to expose the exact numbers that he doesn't want you to see. Now, stick with me, guys, because it's actually worse than we thought. Now, while RFK Jr. was shaking up Washington and Jerome Powell was hiding behind politics on the West Coast, you got Gavin Newsom, who's quietly setting California on fire financially. Just last year, California was bragging about a $100 billion surplus under Gavin Newsom's leadership. Y'all remember that, right? Fast forward to today, they blew it. They're now in a multi-billion-dollar hole again. Well, what the heck happened? Well, Gavin Newsom already begged for an emergency $3 or $4 billion to cover the shortfall. And when that wasn't enough, he came crawling back to Trump about a week later for another $1 billion in loans. And so now here's the twist. Despite getting both cash injections, he's about to announce another massive deficit for 2025. And not a word about it at this time. No press conference, no apologies, just lies stacked on top of lies. Now remember, California's constitution requires a balanced budget. But Gavin Newsom's been playing all sorts of games, borrowing behind the scenes and leaving Californians living paycheck to paycheck in a state that should be booming. They've got the highest taxes in the whole country. How are they short on cash? And now, with no bailout money in sight, the same man who once promised he had it all under control, he's suddenly out of options. He's out of cash. He's broke. So how does Gavin Newsom spin a collapse of this scale? How do you make a whole state go broke? Easy. He blames somebody else. And you can probably guess who, right? Just drop a quick comment. Who do you think Gavin Newsom is blaming right now for this incompetence, for this failure? Instead of owning the financial mismanagement, the bloated spending, and the illegal programs bleeding the state dry, Gavin Newsom is blaming Donald Trump's tariffs. You heard that right, guys. Newsom, right along with Attorney General Rob Bonta, is now suing the Trump administration, trying to pause Trump's tariff policies by claiming that they've created uncertainty and hurt the state's tax revenue. I don't know how he's not overwhelmed with embarrassment to actually try to bring this to a court. Now, apparently, when Trump's tariffs started pulling in $600 million a day and leveling the playing field for American manufacturers, California's export-heavy ports got caught off guard. So what's Gavin Newsom's plan? Sue the federal government, blame the tariffs, pretend the budget mess had nothing to do with a bloated Medicaid system filled with illegal enrollees, endless state-funded bailouts, or reckless spending on climate initiatives. Meanwhile, their infrastructure was crumbling. But here's the real kicker if that didn't do it for you. Gavin Newsom has no problem begging Washington for money when he's underwater. But the moment accountability shows up, all of a sudden he's screaming about Trump, federal overreach, and unfair policies. It's a classic move. Fail in silence, then blame loudly. And when you wonder why people of California are fleeing the state in record numbers, going to other states like Texas and Florida, if you were leaving California, what state would you go to? But it gets even worse, guys, because RFK Jr. didn't just expose the lies about Medicaid cuts. He actually revealed how fraud, abuse, and legal use of funds are draining states like California dry, bone dry. So I'm going to go ahead and show you exactly how millions were stolen from Medicaid and how RFK Jr. dropped the hammer on Congress for ignoring it. So don't go anywhere, guys. This is where things really get dark, and this is where RFK Jr. really drops the hammer. So while Democrats in Congress kept basically repeating the talking point that 13 million Americans are going to lose health care under Trump's plan, RFK Jr., he did something pretty radical. He told the truth. The reason for the cuts? Well, massive fraud, waste, and abuse. That's why just a few, and it's not just a few bad actors. We're talking millions, guys. Because of Doge, we were able to determine that over 8 million people were committing Medicaid fraud. That is 1 million people claiming Medicaid in multiple states. It's crazy. That's right, guys. Another million double dipping, receiving both Medicaid and Obamacare, which is flat out illegal. Then the real political dynamite, another million illegal immigrants receiving taxpayer-funded Medicaid in California. So they're short because they've been giving money to people who shouldn't have been here to begin with. But this isn't about cutting care for the needy. It was about cutting criminals and freeloaders out of the system. But instead of acknowledging that, Democrats in Congress, they tried to twist the narrative, accusing RFK Jr. and Trump of attacking the poor. Well, then he hit back hard, reminding them that Medicaid is for poor children, mothers, and the disabled, not for able-bodied adults who refuse to work. And certainly not for people gaming the system from across state lines. And then he confronted them with the facts. They had nothing. Just spin, just outrage, no answers though. And the media, they weren't ready for this. Because as RFK Jr. shredded the lies on TV, their entire storyline collapsed in real time. Now for months, heck, maybe even years, the mainstream media told us that, hey, Trump's tariffs would trash the economy, that jobs would not come back. Inflation was out of control and irreversible. And any cuts to entitlements meant mass suffering. Well, guess what just happened? Even CNN had to admit inflation is now at its lowest since early 2021. Grocery prices are dropping at the fastest pace in over 5 years. Jobs are booming. And the kicker? Bloomberg News. They just pulled the... Guys, Bloomberg of all places, right? So Bloomberg News just pulled their recession forecast, calling President Trump's economy unstoppable. I mean, you can almost hear the panic behind the teleprompters. It's crazy, right? Their narrative is in free fall. The people the people they mocked, right? RFK Jr., Trump, even working class voters who dared to believe in a better future, they are now being proven right. And you know, you want to know the moment that it all started to unravel? It wasn't a press release, wasn't a spreadsheet. It was RFK Jr. sitting in that hearing room, exposing the truth so clearly, so bluntly, that not even the media could spin it. Medicaid fraud exposed. Powell's sabotage called out. California's collapse unmasked. And in just a minute, we're going to go ahead and break down the final face-off of this political firestorm. RFK Jr. versus Congress. Trump versus Powell. And of course, Newsom versus accountability. Now, this is not just a news cycle, guys. This is a battle for America's economic soul. I mean, stick with me, guys, because we're closing in with all of this and what this really, really means and where this country actually goes from here. It's absolutely amazing. So after everything we've covered so far, I want you to ask yourself this. Who's really standing for the American people? Because this week, we saw it all laid bare. The shutdown, the showdown lines have been drawn, and they're clearer than ever. You got RFK Jr. versus Congress. In that hearing room, RFK Jr. wasn't just defending policy. He was defending truth. He didn't dodge. He didn't deflect. He dismantled lie after lie. He exposed fraud. And he forced elected officials to confront the ugly truth about waste, corruption, and Medicaid abuse. He came prepared. They came with talking points, and by the end, RFK Jr. left them speechless and scrambling. Then, of course, you got Trump versus Jerome Powell. So while President Trump delivers real-world results, lower prices, rising jobs, booming domestic investment, Jerome Powell, he continues to choke the economy with these artificially high interest rates. Why? Because admitting Trump was right means surrendering their grip on power. Jerome Powell's not neutral, he's political. And now RFK Jr. has said the quiet part out loud. Jerome Powell is finished. So either he works for the people or he gets replaced. Then, of course, you got Newsom versus accountability. So you got Gavin Newsom, who promised a $100 billion surplus. Right? And now he's hiding a financial disaster that's growing by the week. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I don't want any ants crawling into my water. That would be nasty. So his answer was to blame Trump, to sue the federal government, pretend his bloated, reckless spending had nothing to do with it. But here's the truth. You can't keep robbing taxpayers, mismanaging budgets, and then crying Trump every time the money runs out. The state constitution says you have to balance the books. Newsom isn't just failing, he's breaking the law. America's at a crossroads at this point, guys. So on the one side, you got people like RFK Jr. and Trump who are demanding transparency, they're fighting fraud, and they're putting American families first. On the other, entrenched elites like Powell and Newsom who would rather collapse the system than to give up control. So to me, this is more than one hearing. You know, it's more than one deficit. It's more than one interest rate. This is a battle between a revived America and a system that's trying to stop it. So now the question is, well, which side are you on? You know, if you believe it's time to fire the people sabotaging our future, if you believe the truth still matters, and if you believe America deserves leaders who fight for working people instead of covering up their failures, go ahead and go down to the bottom below, give this video a like, drop a quick comment that you support RFK Jr. 47, and subscribe to the channel. And make sure to share this video with someone who needs to wake up. Because the more people who see what just happened in Congress, the harder it becomes for those people over there to hide it. If you haven't already, if you're over 65, if your parents are over 65, grandparents, look out for your parents, guys. If we don't look out for our parents, who will? make sure they're not overpaying. Hit the link down below. Make sure you or your parents or grandparents are not overpaying. Give Chapter a call or even hit them up on the web. It takes 2 seconds. Can you imagine if you ended up saving your parents a couple $100 by, reaching out to Chapter? Can you imagine what would happen? Like how they would feel? Wow. Thank you. I'd be pretty happy, right? Anyway, I'm not making any promises, but just reach out to Chapter. Takes a couple seconds. They're some of the nicest people I've ever met. And see what they can do for you for Medicare. Make sure that you're on the best plan. Make sure you're getting all the benefits, your doctor, and all the benefits that you deserve. Hit the like button, subscribe. We'll see you next time.